Hello out there. So today I'm going to be demonstrating how to make kimchi, which kimchi is a fermented sauerkraut dish or condiment, depending on what you're making, and tastes super duper good. I'm actually currently addicted to it. I've been eating it at least once a day for the last 2 weeks, which is fine with me because it's fermented, it's vegetables, it's full of probiotics, it's healthy, and it makes my tummy happy. No matter what I've been eating it with, I don't experience any bloat afterwards, any digestive discomfort, and that's most likely due to all the probiotic benefits that it has. So let's get started so that you too can have a happy, healthy gut as well. And like I said, the stuff just tastes fantastic. There's all sorts of recipes out there for kimchi. Some are more fishy than others. I guess it just depends on what part of Asia it came from or what part of Korea specifically. It's a Korean dish. I've experimented with a handful of different ones, and I'll be honest, they all taste good. I just feel that some pair better with others. The one we're going to be making today is called sweet, salty, sour kimchi, and this one just seems to pair with everything perfectly. I even stick a big cupful between two pieces of gluten-free bread and a little bit of mayonnaise and eat it as a kimchi sandwich. That's how good it is. So let's start with what we do here. Start with cabbage. This is 1 head of Napa cabbage. And you want to use Napa because that's traditionally what's used for kimchi. And a lot of times you'll see some recipes where the people just, or whoever's making it, just quarters the cabbage, literally, and then just continues on with the recipe with big quartered pieces. I like cutting it to this size because then it's just very easy then to go ahead and add it to whatever you're eating as a condiment on the side, or just eat right out of the jar like I've been doing. You don't want to cut them too small, and again, I hope you guys can see. Size does matter when it comes to fermentation. The smaller you cut your vegetables, the faster it'll ferment, and your odds of having mushy vegetables go up greatly when you cut your pieces too small. My sitter just made this last week at her house, and she made the mistake of shredding the cabbage, so when she brought it over for me to taste it, it actually tasted a little bit different and not as good as it would have if she left her pieces this big, because it fermented too quickly and it was kind of mushy at the same time. So we don't want mushy kimchi. That's the moral of this story. So you want to cut your pieces like this. And then I had this cabbage soaking in salt water for about, I want to say, a day. You don't need to do it for a day. The only reason I did it for a day is because I just couldn't find an opportunity to make this video. You only need to soak it for about 8 to 12 hours. And the purpose of soaking it is you want to just soften the cabbage a little bit so that these thick pieces can become a little bit flexible. Now you just heard that crack. This isn't ideal, even though I soaked it for 24 hours. I obviously needed to put a little bit more salt. Pretty much I don't have an exact amount of salt to add to the water. What I did was just covered this whole bowl in water, and I probably added about maybe 1/4 cup. Looking at my pieces, I probably should have added about maybe a 1/2 cup of salt, and then just mix it all together, kept it submerged, and I let it sit in my dining room for 8 to 12 hours. So this piece looks good. So maybe that piece just wasn't submerged under the water. But as you can tell here, it's kind of flexible. And this is what you want. The salting or the softening of the cabbage in salt water will just, again, allow your kimchi to ferment a little bit better, or more specifically, these large pieces of cabbage. So what we have here is cabbage. Now hopefully, ideally, whoever is watching this video has a hard copy of the recipe, hot, salty, sour kimchi. So I always like to print out my recipes rather than look at them on my phone. It's just easier for me that way, and plus they get that nice used kind of look on them with all the stains that end up going along with it. And ideally you want to get all your ingredients and prep yourself prior to starting, right? There's nothing worse than sitting down or standing up getting ready to make a dish and then you realize you're missing ingredients or don't have all of them. So I'm going to show you guys really quick the ingredients. And if you do have this recipe, amounts on here are for a half a gallon, and that's pretty much what I used as well. But I definitely want you guys to know you don't have to be perfect with these amounts. You could kind of, the more you make this, the more you kind of play around with it, the more of a certain ingredient you could add in. If you particularly like a certain ingredient fermented, it's all up to you. Use this more as a guide when you first start to just get an idea of how to make kimchi. So here we go. We have the cabbage, like I already said, Napa cabbage again. I have shredded carrot. This is more than what's on the recipe because I like the taste of carrot that's fermented. I accidentally left the blade in my food processor when I was shredding it, so this is actually a little bit more shredded than what I would like. I like the long pieces of shredded carrot. Again, this is all just preference. You could even chop them up, you could even cube them. It's up to you. Do little matchsticks. Again, it just comes down to preference and consistency. I don't mind a mushy carrot because this will turn mushy in the kimchi as long as my cabbage isn't mushy. So again, it's up to you. If you don't like the taste of mushy vegetables, this is something you can experiment with as you continue your ferment journey. So there's the carrots. Here I have daikon, right? Is this what we're using? Sorry, I have to double check it. Yes, daikon. This is one of those weird exotic root vegetables that I've never used before I made kimchi, to be honest. And raw, I haven't tried it raw. I guess I could try it right now. It's kind of bland. Has a little bit of heat to it. Oh, kind of reminds me of a radish. Actually, it totally tastes like a radish, but it's white. So I found this at Caputo's in my area. I'm sure you can find it at any supermarket where it has a variety of produce to choose from. It's in the root vegetable section. It's long, white, and it's a tube. I put this through a French fry chopper thingy that I have. Actually, I'll show it to you guys really quick. This. So I was able to use this, put the daikon, chop it up, put it in here, and have these little matchsticks come through. Just to let you guys know that fermented daikon is the bomb. I have to say, this stuff tastes so good in the kimchi, and so that's why I have slightly bigger pieces. It does not turn mushy, and the heat that is there when you eat it raw is gone with the fermentation. It actually turns into this like super good, sweet tasting morsel, I guess, even though I don't really like that word. So there's daikon, and I added a little bit more than what the recipe calls for because I like it. Chopped up garlic. I think I have 8 cloves on there. I actually probably put 12 because this could be another Mediterranean fusion aspect of the title of this recipe. So there's the garlic because you can never have enough garlic. Here I have sugar. You want to use raw organic cane sugar because it has minerals, and the sugar actually feeds the bacteria that forms when you're fermenting, so you want high quality sugar. You don't want to use a refined sugar. I feel like I need to move a little bit faster because I've been talking quite a bit, and this is not a class. This is actually a YouTube video. Here I have salt. I'm using unrefined sea salt here. Again, you want to use high quality unrefined product because the salt, unrefined salt, has minerals, and the minerals actually also help the fermentation process move along. Ginger. Ginger is chopped up into cubes. I'm actually going to process this in a couple seconds, so don't worry about your size, and don't worry if you leave a little bit of the peel on. It's okay because it's going to end up being processed. I do recommend processing it, as I'm going to show in a couple seconds, only because fermented ginger just doesn't taste that good to me. Again, you might like it. Obviously, a lot of you probably already know raw ginger has a really strong taste. When it's blended and processed with these ingredients here, which you'll see in a minute, it just takes on a whole new flavor. And then finally, I have here red chili paste. So you could use red chili paste, red peppers, or chili flakes. you don't necessarily have to do the paste. This was a brand new ingredient for me. It's actually ground fresh chili paste, and I was able to find it in the Asian section of Mariano's. So it's out there, and it's actually pretty cheap. I think I only paid a couple bucks for this, and I know I'll be using the whole bottle because I just can't stop making kimchi. The stuff tastes awesome. So I want to make sure we just have all the ingredients here so I don't have to get up in the middle of this video. And yes, I covered everything. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take, what are we taking? We're going to take the chili, the sugar, and the sea salt. And we're going to process all of this to form a smooth paste. So there's the ginger, the sea salt, and the sugar. In your recipe, I have enough sugar there for where half of it goes into your pre-soaked cabbage and the other half goes into your paste. So just to verify that. It says it in the ingredients, but in case you get confused, I want you to know. And then I'm going to just go ahead now and process this quickly. And then... And again, the processing just allows the flavors to get infused a lot better, and you don't get these weird chunks of ginger. It's the only weirdness that you would get if you did not process it and just stuck all the pieces whole in. Now, if you don't have a food processor, you could still just add in the ingredients just like I'm going to do with the rest, and you're going to see in a moment. You don't have to use it. It'll still ferment, but you do get a different end product by processing it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this. I'm just going to go ahead and use my hands because that's what I do. And I knew this looked weird, but I forgot the chili paste. So you want to go ahead and add the chili paste as well. Let me make sure I have everything. We got the ginger, the chili, sugar, and salt. Yes. Okay, let's put this back on. I don't have you in my kitchen because I like this view of my house better for you guys to see. Plus, my kitchen is a total mess right now and I don't want to clean it. So here we go, back to processing. I'm just going to go ahead and put my hands in carefully. There is a blade in there. I'm a hands-on kind of person. I tend to do everything quickly because there's just not enough time in the day, obviously, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. So I don't mind putting my hands in. And ultimately, you don't really even need to worry about germs or even wash your hands if you didn't want to, because the good bacteria that is formed from fermentation overpowers any bad bacteria from forming, or even any bad bacteria that's there. So I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a minute. So there we go. I put my paste on top. I'm adding my carrots, putting that in the bowl. I wish I had a bigger bowl to work with. I don't, but that's okay. And now I'm actually going to leave it with my shredded ingredients at this moment, including my garlic. I'm going to add the garlic in there. And I'm going to leave the daikon last. And I'm going to tell you guys in a minute why. So now, once I've dumped all the ingredients, I'm actually going to start mixing. And I'm going to use my fingers and my strength to mix this really good and combine all of it together. And as I'm mixing, I'm squeezing, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to release the juices from the cabbage, the carrots, and maybe even the garlic. And what this does, it just helps break the cabbage down even more, allowing it to get more effectively fermented. So I could just mix all the ingredients with a spoon and then continue on with the recipe. But I want liquid to come out. And I wish I had some water here in case we need it, but that's okay. If we need it, I'll just get up and you guys can stare at the kimchi for a few minutes, or rather a few seconds. So I'm mixing now. And this might be easier if I were to sit on my leg a little bit. So I'm mixing. So you're going to spend a few minutes doing this. Again, you know, fermentation is actually a traditional food preservation technique, and over 1/3 of the world's population still ferments today. Maybe about 150 years ago, or closer to 100, is when fermentation just started falling to the wayside in westernized countries, because canning was invented and then refrigeration and freezing was invented. So The process of fermenting to preserve food isn't very common in our society today. So obviously refrigerators and canning and freezers are good. They're very convenient, but at the same time, we have lost the benefits of fermenting due to our conveniences. And the main benefit of fermenting is that it provides probiotics. So fermentation technically means that you're producing energy without oxygen. And once you submerge your vegetable in your salt water or sugar water, depending on what you're fermenting, for vegetables it's usually salt. With this one, we use both a combination of salt and sugar. The fact that it's submerged for a certain amount of time, it then continues to form what's called lactic acid bacteria, and that lactic acid bacteria is what maintains the preservation of the food. So, and provides all the wonderful strains of probiotics that we need. Where am I going with this? Well, I'm continuing to smush, and I'm noticing that there is some liquid coming out, and as you can tell, the amount of cabbage that I have in here is going down because it's getting smushed. So this is easier for me to work with now without stuff just overflowing. And I'm going to switch arms because my right arm is slightly stronger than my left. It would be nice if they were the same. Yes, this is a workout too on its own. Mostly because this is such a big amount of cabbage that I'm using right now. Again, this is about a half gallon's worth. I have small jars here that I'm going to jar for various reasons, but if you bought one of those large half-gallon mason jars, that's how much you would be able to put, or that's how big this amount is. Okay, so I'm mushing. Let me show you guys what it looks like. Kind of looks like that. So it actually looks really good right now. And then there's lots of liquid on the bottom that I'm going to be able to work with. So, moving on. Now, I think actually I've done a pretty good job of mushing this as much as needed. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in the daikon right now. I didn't mush it with the daikon because it's just not mushable, if that's even a word. But instead I'm just going to go ahead and mix in the daikon as thoroughly as I can. So again, going back to the benefits of ferments, the probiotics found in fermented food, which are a result of lactic acid bacteria, are just awesome and way more effective and potent than if you were to take a probiotic pill. For several reasons. One is that there's just so many more strains found in ferment, and the combination of strains found in fermented foods hasn't even been touched upon by science. If you follow the probiotic science or the gut health science that's out there right now, they've been able to identify quite a few strains and relate them back to specific symptoms in the body, which is fantastic. But at the same time, the world of certain combinations of strains and their benefits working together has just not even been touched upon, because it's just it's almost impossible to figure it out, at least right now in today's world. So fermented foods are considered nature's perfect probiotic. To give you an example and kind of compare it to something we do every day, this amount of kimchi is equal to 8 bottles of probiotics that you would buy at the store. So it's strong stuff, for sure. So, okay, this is my final product. It's mixed in with everything. I added all the ingredients that I showed you guys, and now I'm going to go ahead and stuff in the jars. And then I'm actually going to make this video short because I'm sure you guys are busy too. Well, I could actually keep talking for quite a bit about this, but I want to keep it short. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stuff this kimchi in the jars as much as I can, and I'm going to use my fingers to kind of push it down. You could use a wooden spoon or any other type of tool you need if you can't get your hand and your fingers in, if it's because it's too big of a vessel, you know, depending on where you're at or what you're using. When it comes to fermenting vessels, you do want to use glass, or actually the main ceramic is debatable, but you definitely don't want to ferment in plastic. Fermentation is produces a strong metabolic reaction, and so if you are fermenting in plastic, it'll leach chemicals out of the plastic into your ferment, and we don't want that. Granted, one of the benefits of eating fermented foods is that it helps detox our body from certain pesticides and certain chemicals, which is fantastic, but still, we have enough of that stuff in our environment as it is. We definitely don't want to contribute to it by fermenting in it. So I've done a pretty good job of stuffing this in here, and you guys might be working with one big container. Because I'm working with several little ones right now, I'm going to go ahead and stuff all of them before I show you the liquid part of this. You know, you may be thinking right now, why do I need probiotics? I don't take antibiotics, or I have a strong gut, or I don't experience any digestive issues. But the truth of the matter is, most likely, everyone in Western society, especially in our environment, need to supplement with probiotics, because there's so many factors that just destroy the good bacteria in our gut. And whether we feel it today or feel it in some way that we haven't been able to connect to good bacteria, you most likely need to replenish your good bacteria on a daily basis. Antibiotics, like I mentioned, completely destroy good bacteria in your system. Sure, they kill out the bad guys, but they also kill out the good guys. And I recently read that it may take up to 2 years for your body to naturally recover from a round of antibiotics. That's if you do not supplement with or make an active effort to replenish the good bacteria in your gut. Of course, the body has a natural homeostasis where it brings itself back into balance if everything else is functioning correctly. And antibiotics will cause the body to not be able to produce the level of probiotics prior to its use for at least 2 years. So that's crazy if you think about it, because not a lot of people take probiotics or eat fermented foods on a regular basis, but a lot of people definitely take antibiotics. And it's not even a matter of just taking antibiotics from the doctor. There's antibiotics in our meat, there's antibiotics in our water supply. Antibiotics are everywhere, unfortunately. Another thing that kills good bacteria in our gut is chlorine in water. So unless you drink super filtered clean water, you're killing the good bacteria. All chemicals, so unless you're living off the grid and growing your own food and drinking your own water out of your own well, and some people even debate that because our ground's contaminated. Unless you're doing all that, you most likely are being exposed to some type of chemical in your environment that's destroying the good bacteria in your gut. And then finally, going back to fermenting, where was I going with this? I lost my train of thought as I'm trying to smush in all this kimchi. I lost my train of thought. Oh yes, due to refrigeration and canning and pasteurization. So pasteurization is a big deal in the U.S. Really, nothing can be sold in mainstream unless it's been pasteurized. There are some small mom and pop local farmers market or local shops where you could buy handmade or homemade fermented goods. But when it comes to the mainstream supermarkets or mainstream grocery stores or whatever you want to call them, none of their products in there are raw or fermented, even if labeled as so. From a legal standpoint and FDA perspective, they just can't sell them. At some point, they've been pasteurized, and then singled out strains have been put back in. So just let you know. Okay, so here we go. I did a pretty good job of stuffing all that in these 4 containers, and you probably, hopefully, will do a good job stuffing all of that in your container. So as you can tell, I'm going to smush this a little bit farther down, and I want the amount of vegetable to kind of just go up to the first ring around this lid. So I'm going to do my best to keep smushing and try not to leave any air pockets. And actually, if I stand up and smush, I don't want you guys to just view my abdomen, so I'm standing up for this one, so I can put all my strength in it. You know, just so you know, there are fermentation tools and crocks out there. You don't need to spend extra money on it. If you want to and you want to get all fancy and feel special, I guess you could. But you could really just work with whatever you have in your kitchen when it comes to fermenting. Back in the day, people would literally just do what I did, skip the jars, and leave it in the bowl. They wouldn't use metal, of course. They would use glass or ceramic, I think, but I'd have to double check that. And even plastic if they didn't have any of the better stuff, depending on how long they were planning on leaving it in here for. And as long as the vegetable stays submerged, technically you don't need to seal it, which I'm going to do right now. You could just weight it on top somehow to make sure it stays submerged. But that's the key to fermenting. You want to make sure that whatever you're fermenting stays covered in water. If it doesn't, that's where you run the risk of developing maybe some mold, or it just won't taste good. Or it just, you know, pretty much that's it. It'll collect mold or not taste good. By keeping it submerged, again, that lactic acid bacteria keeps all that mold away and doesn't allow it to form. And what's even cooler is that some people say fermented vegetables are even healthier than raw vegetables, because raw vegetables that have been found to be contaminated with various foodborne bacteria, like E. coli, what's the other one? I'm drawing a blank right now, but I think you guys know what I'm saying. Listeria is another one. There's 4 specific foodborne bacteria associated with illness, with food poisoning specifically, that have been found to be removed or broken down with fermentation. So some people, you don't run the risk of having contaminated food or contaminated produce. So now, as you can tell, what I'm doing is I add a little bit of that liquid because I want to make sure it stays submerged, and it needed more liquid. So you definitely don't want to throw out your liquid. And in the case of you, if you're doing this in one vessel, in the case if you stuff your vegetables in super efficiently and don't have enough liquid to go all the way to the top, like is happening right now, you can add a little bit of clean filtered water to it. You want to make sure it just gets all the way to the top. So that's it. We're done with that one. I'm going to go ahead and seal it. And I'm not going to do all of these in front of you guys, because technically you don't need me to, you don't need to see me do the exact same thing another 3 times. But then what you want to do is you want to close it. Like I said, you don't necessarily have to seal it. You can find some way to keep it submerged. I like sealing it. And there is some science out there that says that sealed ferments produce actually more probiotics than unsealed ferments. But a lot of people will debate that. But again, I just like the way they taste. I've been happy with sealing them for a few years now, and I continue to seal my ferments. So now you take this. We're done. That's it. We got kimchi right here. You take this and you let it sit on your countertop for minimum 3 days. It's not ready. We can't eat it. It hasn't been fermented. But in 3 days, when you open it, make sure you open it over a big bowl, just like this, and twist really hard, because what's going to end up happening is it'll have fermented. The lactic acid bacteria will have caused the metabolic reaction that we want, and as soon as you open it, it'll all just, the liquid will just come bubbling out, and that's what you want. You'll hear a hiss, the liquid will come bubbling out. You want to catch that liquid because that's literally probiotic juice. And then you could always put that liquid back in once your ferment has calmed down, I guess, and then it's ready to eat. You then at that point would put it in the fridge to slow down the fermentation process. If for some reason you don't like the way it tastes, which I doubt, because at the 3-day mark this tastes perfect, but if you don't like the way it tastes, seal it again, put those juices back in, stuff those vegetables back down, and let it sit for another 2 days or 3 days on your countertop or in your cabinet. Then taste it again. And I'm 98% sure that you will love the taste of this stuff. And again, a lot of times when it comes to kimchis, a lot of people they don't like kimchi because they've only tried one, and maybe that one hasn't been fermented long enough. I did recently make another kimchi with a lot of the traditional fish ingredients, which go into it, and I might show another video on that at some point, on that one in particular. At the 5 day mark, or the 3 day mark, I kind of liked it. I thought it was okay. It went well with fish because it had a fishy taste. At the 5 day mark, it tasted a little bit better. And then finally, I ate it yesterday at the 10 day mark of sitting in my kitchen cabinet fermenting, and it tasted fantastic. I was able to eat it plain last night with gluten-free crackers. It was delicious. So, time matters. Again, this is just what you have here is not only, a jar full of stuff that tastes awesome, but you also have some really strong probiotics, which is way cheaper than if you were to buy. This amount would equal maybe about 15 bottles of probiotics. And as many of you probably already know, the high quality probiotics are super expensive, so that would cost you a lot of money. So that's it. Feel free to comment below if you have any questions, or contact me via email. Let me know if you make this yourselves, and more importantly, how you think it tastes. And yeah, share below. It was great doing this little video for you. Till next time.